Welcome to the Freelancer's Friend, episode 11.
I was doing it because I thought I needed a bigger audience in order to be successful. And I had this idea in my head that I couldn't somehow succeed or earn a good living with a small audience.
If you want to enjoy a thriving freelance business, then learning from others with the knowledge and experience is invaluable. Our guest this time is Jonathan McLernon, an online nutrition coach, as well as mentor to new coaches building their business. And in this episode, we chat about why organic marketing can be enough for a freelancer to succeed, at least in the beginning, and what is the value of building a large audience and whether that's even necessary, and why the goal of a six-figure income that seems to be touted a lot by online gurus at the moment is overrated, and other interesting and useful stuff. So let's get on with it. Welcome, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much. Glad to be here.
And where are you calling from?
I'm coming from Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. So I don't imagine it would be interesting if you had some listeners from Red Deer, but it's a relatively small town between two larger cities here in Alberta. So
it looks pretty nice behind you.
Yeah, that's a backdrop of Venice, which I did spend some time living in Italy a while back. But yes, I'm not actually in Venice as much as I wouldn't mind being right now.
Now, you've got a very diverse background. You've been a nanotechnology research chemist, a Navy Marine engineer, a globetrotting nomad having travelled 45 countries on 5 continents, a powerline technician, and a nutrition and supplement store owner. And now you're an online nutrition coach, as well as mentor to new coaches building their business, and no doubt supported by a degree you have in chemistry and marketing psychology. And something I wasn't expecting is that you've survived an attempted murder, nearly being beaten to death in South Africa.
Don't recommend that. It's not a lot of fun.
It doesn't sound like a lot of fun, no. And as well as that, you lost your life savings in a failed business venture, and you rebuilt yourself from the ground up. And both these are really fascinating, and I'd love to hear more about those, definitely. But unfortunately, we need to stick to the main topic today of organic marketing. Well, that's what I'd like to talk about anyway. Organic marketing, which you know a fair deal about, and for freelancers in particular.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's, like I say, there's more to your story too, but for the sake of the listener, let's just focus on building a freelance business with organic marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I assume this is the main way you're growing your coaching business at the moment.
Yeah. Both the coaching and the mentorship is really done through organic marketing. And, the question that maybe a lot of people ask, especially in 2021, is organic marketing dead? Because it seems like social media is probably the biggest place where organic marketing takes place, although I am quite a fan of email as well. But it seems like there's often like this never-ending battle for, because of algorithmic changes and this and that and the next thing, along with, it feels like perhaps the market is getting more and more saturated, especially in the post-COVID economy. I mean, it's a funny phrase that we're using, but more and more people are going online. And so, but part of the problem is when you enter a particular space, it will feel like social media will kind of push you into an echo chamber, and it will make it sound like, or seem like there's billions of people doing what you're trying to do. When there's often so many, I say to people, look, I could find enough people that need my help in my city alone of 100,000 people, really. But the way that social media will make it seem is that everybody in your feed or every friend request is going to come from someone who's doing what you're doing, and it feels like there's just a relentless onslaught of competition. When in fact that's not really the case. There's a lot of people out there that need help, and I don't think there's ever been a better time to be like a solopreneur, to tackle the gig economy. And there are ways you can do it that actually work pretty effectively still, without having to do paid traffic.
And do you include any paid marketing methods in your own overall marketing these days?
Not currently. I am going to move into it to a small degree. Because I will say, there does come a certain point in business where you've really tapped into a lot of the organic market that you're going to reach, and gleaned as much as you can from that, and then you'll come to a certain point in business where you feel like, okay, now the process of growing organically it's starting to slow down and lose momentum. And I would say the other part of it is, I've got a young son, 3 months old, and it takes quite a bit of time, quite a bit more time than I thought having a kid. And
yeah, I know what you mean. I've been there.
So the one thing to be aware of with organic marketing, especially if you're starting out or in the beginning, is it's going to take quite a bit of time input. So I say in business, you pay for things in either time or money. And in the beginning, if you're a new business, you probably don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing, which means that you're going to invest your time in just like starting conversations, connecting with people, creating content, publishing content. You're going to pay in time until you get to a point in your business where it makes sense to start buying back your time. But I will say to people, like, it's tempting to want to invest in a lot of things right away, because you might think that it's going to make the process easier. But when I look at my business from when I started to now and how much it's evolved, there's actually some real value in the process of like hitting a lot of speed bumps along the way, and really sort of battle testing your business in a much smaller arena than to say that, like, I want to build like the scalable 6-figure business in 12 weeks or something like that. Like, the sustainability of that just really isn't there.
So it is possible to build a freelance business with just organic marketing alone.
Yeah, and what I would say is, like, if someone is just going to start out or has an idea, and you say, okay, well, I want to get started on this. What do I want to do? I mean, the first thing you want to ask realistically is, it sounds awesome to say, I'm passionate about butterflies. It's like, all right, cool. Is there demand for what it is that you want to offer? Passion alone can't sustain a business. You do need to have a degree of passion for what you do, because if you don't, you're gonna quit when it gets hard. And here's the other thing about say social media. I think a lot of people, especially in the sort of the business guru or influencer sphere, sort of want to portray things like life is always good, or life is always perfect, or something like that. It's like, business is actually pretty tough. I don't know the exact stats, but I believe it's in the neighborhood of 90 to 95% of businesses don't make it to 5 years. And in the coaching sphere in particular, I think there's around a 50% turnover rate within the first 12 months.
Right. Yeah. That's believable.
So it is difficult to make it. But if you go into it with this expectation, like this understanding that, this is going to be a challenge, you don't get so discouraged when you hit some road bumps and think, like, what's wrong with me or my business? Like, nothing. It's like learning any skill or developing, you're not just going to dive into it and be a master of it. Like, there is a growth process that you have to go through in the process of building a sustainable long-term business. And really the point of, I think, being a solopreneur is to build what we call like a lifestyle business, ultimately one that you have more freedom around, not less freedom around. I think that's the big goal here.
Yeah, and I see you feel like me that the 6-figure goal is overrated. It seems to be all over the internet at the moment, in adverts and products from marketing gurus who in many cases are likely not to be making 6 figures themselves. It's just a thing that's battered around a lot. Why would you say that the 6-figure goal is overrated?
For a couple of reasons. And you're right. There isn't, like, I'm to be clear, in case it isn't clear, I'm 39 years old. So I've been around the block for a while. I've been in business, and I've had multiple business ventures before. Some unrelated to online stuff. When some 22-year-old kid reaches out and tells me that he's going to help me, scale my business to 6 figures in 12 weeks or less, here's what runs through my mind. What you're potentially wanting to teach me is probably reasonably sound business theory, but you're 22 years old. Like, what you're basically doing is probably ripping off an established business guru who's been around for a number of years and just basically you thought that it would be easier to be a business guru than it is to, you couldn't hack it running your own business. And so you thought it'd be easier to try and be a business guru and so on. So, that's, you kind of touched on that. There's a lot of so-called gurus out there who aren't necessarily making six figures, but the thing is, it's more difficult than people to realize, especially when starting out. So, and just to be clear, in case anyone is unclear, when we're talking about a six-figure business, we're talking about a business that produces over 100,000 per year in annual revenue. So in the UK, it'd be £100,000, or in the US, $100,000.
It sounds nice, but it's a lot of money, really, for the average person and the average needs, or their average basic needs.
Yeah, because so that's around 8.5K per month, or 8,500 per month, and a lot of focuses say put on what we call 10K months, or monthly revenue exceeding 10,000. And I will say it's actually easier to have a 10K month than it is to have a 100K year. And the difference there is what I would say that is the sustainability or viability of your offer. You can have like a good month, and I think a lot of people, again, when they fudge the numbers, and they do a lot of what we call extrapolation. So I had a 10K month, so I have a six-figure business. Like, no, you don't. Because there's a big difference between recurring revenue that you receive from people versus, say, lump sum payments and the time required to deliver the service. So just to give you a picture, let's say that I'm selling a $2,000 coaching package. You think, okay, I have to sell 5 of those packages to have a 10K month. But what people not realize is to deliver the service that someone's paid me $2,000 for, it could take between 3 and 6 months. And so that $10,000 from 5 people represents each one of those people being that I'm working with them for between 3 and 6 months. So the recurring revenue on that is not $10,000 a month. It's I've been paid in full a few times. So to give people some more numbers, just and my realm is really the coaching sphere. The average income for a coach is around 4.2 K, or 4,200 per month. So around 47 to 51,000 actually US dollars per year, which is not a bad income. I wouldn't know the conversion. I would expect it to be around 35,000 pounds per year in the UK. And so the guru in the mentorship space, they lead you to believe that, everyone out there is crushing it, nailing 10K months, when that probably actually represents less than 5% of the coaching space. And when you see people talking about those numbers, there's very often factors, what I would call like lies of omission, not deliberate lies, but there's things that aren't being said. Oh, I was a coach in Los Angeles at a CrossFit gym with 500 members. So yeah, I had access to a giant audience. Or, my dad is a Silicon Valley entrepreneur, and I'm connected to a lot of people in Silicon Valley with a lot of money. This isn't to denigrate anybody's efforts, but there's often mitigating factors that don't get told in the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is all maybe part of the dark side of the mentoring and guru industry that I've seen you mention.
Yeah, it's and I wonder what, because social media, the way that like the algorithms seem to work is they push obviously the stuff that's going to get the most emotive response from people, because in social media you're playing a role in what we call the attention economy. Your time, your attention is what's being traded, the commodity, really. And so everybody seems to want to try to put their best foot forward, and maybe they feel a sense of pressure. Like, if I'm going to be a coach, I have to show my potential clients that I'm uber successful in order for them to want to work with me. And I'm like, it's not true. Your clients don't care about the 10K months or things like that. In its simplest form, business exists for one reason. That's to solve a problem, and to solve it better than somebody else can do. And to solve it better doesn't mean you have to reinvent the wheel. It just means that for the person or the clientele that you want to work with, you want to be the best solution for them. And so, again, like the guru mentorship industry wants people to lead people to believe that in 12 weeks or less, they have people absolutely crushing it. But the thing is starting out, your offer's new. It really hasn't been battle tested in the market. It's going to evolve over time. And like, I've seen people start out like lightning in a bottle, but once you get past sort of what I would say like the first layer of your audience, the people who are maybe eager buyers who are going to buy anyways, things dramatically slow down. But maybe we could say, you mentioned the dark side, maybe I'd put it this way. I think sometimes people get this idea that like seemingly wealthy people are happy to hand over big sums of money, like they're somehow stupid or don't care. Like, I'm going to go into LinkedIn and find all these super rich business people and charge them a super high price. And it's like, people who have money didn't get that way by being careless with money. The other thing is they expect an ROI. If someone's going to invest, a few $1,000s, doesn't matter if it's, quote unquote pocket change for them, they expect an ROI of equivalent or greater value. So if you're going to charge a premium price for a service you deliver, you have to be prepared to deliver, equivalent or greater value, because that's what business is. It's an exchange of value, and money's just the medium.
Yeah, I think I imagine most people would be able to see through it anyway, whether they're already successful or not. It's pretty self-evident, I would imagine, but sadly I'm guessing that some people do fall for it and who are maybe not had a business before or just starting out, and it's a shame, but it's part of the internet, I suppose, that there are a lot of dodgy things going on.
Yeah, and that sort of leads into this thought about why it is that people want to hit, say, the 10K months, for example. And I think two reasons come to mind for me. Number one, I would say, is kind of like ego or validation. So the message out there, especially again from the guru space, is that once you hit 10K months, that you've quote unquote made it. And I would say perhaps the opposite perspective of that is true for a lot of coaches or freelancers as well. They feel like if they're not doing that, if you're not hitting 10K months, that somehow you're less of a coach. And nothing could be further from the truth. I remember when I hired a world-class coach and I found out the price that they were charging, I was blown away. I expected to be double or triple what they were charging at the time. And maybe that would tie into the second reason, which I think is really, and why we even want to build a freedom lifestyle business, happiness. So right now, I would say that there's mountains of proof out there that essentially what we call the utility of money, the usefulness of money, dramatically drops off past about, say $80,000 a year. And so a lot of people are sort of placing their happiness in the future. I'll be happy when it, in fact, when you have that first 10K month, and after the initial high wears off in a day or two, I think the realization strikes it, just like it wasn't everything they thought it would be. Like life just carries on. There's the same challenges, the same struggles. And
absolutely.
So for me in business, it became a lot more about freedom than income. So I'd put it this way: if I could make, say, $70,000 or $80,000 a year, working 25 hours a week, that's amazing. And it's a lot less work or hustle than it is to constantly try to get over this arbitrary 10K mark. And I would say that's kind of what I would teach in my courses, my mentorship, that it's more than hitting arbitrary income goals. It's really about creating like a lean and efficient business that doesn't own you, because that's really why you want to craft an online business. Something that can be run on. And again, in saying that, like, I don't want to make it sound like I was able to right away run my business on 25 or 30 hours a week. And mostly I'm referring to at this point my nutrition coaching business, which I run on typically less than about 20 hours a week. But it wasn't always like that. It took time to get to that. It took time to sort of build momentum. I've been coaching online since 2015 as a nutrition coach. And so that's another thing that people tend to miss is, I'm not saying it's going to take 6 years to get to this level, but I have like an established audience. I have a following. I have people that have been consuming my content for a number of, so I have kind of an audience that's really been primed. Whereas starting out, again, it really just takes time to get to that place, and you have to be willing to put in the work to get there.
So if you started again today, knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently? I'm guessing that you would still use organic marketing as a preference to spending money or too much money on marketing.
Yeah. And like that's like a really good question. What would I do differently? And the truth is, not a lot. Like I think, again, when it comes to like building a business, we make it more complicated than it needs to be. And so, I could probably summarize it maybe like, let's say 4 steps. Because, okay, so you're starting all over again. How would you do it? And, I'd actually start with like just an idea, and I'd be publicly transparent about it, which is really interesting. A lot of people seem to want to, I don't know, it's like they want to hide what they're doing, or they want to talk about the fact they're in business to make money. I'm like, this is the reason why business exists. You don't need to be ashamed. Like if you deliver a valuable service that genuinely helps people, you don't need to be ashamed of the fact that you do this for money and this is how you make your living. And so I think starting out in business is daunting for a lot of people because one of the pressures they feel is that they don't want to, say spam their friends on social media. But here's the thing, spamming is only called spam because it's, you're putting stuff in front of people that's not helpful, useful, or interesting, and nobody wants to consume it. And so I would summarize in like four steps. And you'd have to adapt these depending on sort of the industry that you're in terms of freelancing. But first thing I would say for myself is practice what you preach. That's really relevant for me, especially in the nutrition coaching space. And in other spaces, maybe I would say it's live what you teach or be genuinely passionate about what you do. You don't want to sound like, I don't know if you have them in the UK, those late night infomercials where someone's, selling a set of 4 steak knives and act today. And, we're going to throw in a bonus 4 set of steak knives, but wait, there's more. No, you want to be authentically passionate about what you do. And maybe you do something that's not so exciting. So maybe you're not excited about the nuts and bolts of what it is that you do, but you're excited about the value that you deliver and the way that you're able to genuinely help people. That kind of energy is infectious. And so then it comes to creating content. Well, create content that genuinely helps people with regards to whatever it is the problem that you solve. And because I say to people, look, we live in the age of Google. It's very unlikely that you're going to share a piece of information that someone couldn't find for free on Google. That if you go back a few years, it was about like, hey, on my super secret, ultra private email subscriber list, you'll get, stuff that you won't find anywhere else. I'm like, you can find anywhere on the internet now. So you go, well, what do you do in this case? And it's really like, I'll use, again, my nutrition coaching business as an example. I incorporate a lot of my own personal story, my own personal voice, personal values and messaging into the content I write, because people buy on emotion. They justify on logic. They really buy on emotion. And, I teach a content strategy that I call ACE, which is authority, connection, engagement. Because people want to buy from other human beings. There's kind of this hunger out there to really connect with other human beings where there's a backstory behind it as well. And so the types of content you want to produce, one is authority. And authority, in a nutshell, is essentially just demonstrating that you
know what you're talking
about.
An expert.
Yeah, exactly. Connection is really about, again, to use an example, I might show, I actually don't post photos of my son online. But I might show photos of myself and my wife, for example, doing something interesting, like hiking in the mountains. We live, the beautiful Rocky Mountains here. Well, that's just getting people connected to me, the human being, and my sort of backstory. And then engagement content is a little bit of gaming the algorithm to a degree. It's just getting people engaged with your profile. So you might post a question like, does pineapple belong in pizza? That's a classic one, where what you're doing is you're just encouraging people to engage with your profile, and it just increases the likelihood that people are going to see some other stuff that you put out there. Because if all you do is put out, say, authority content, you might be putting out like the best content, but it's typically going to see less engagement. And so over time, what's going to happen is you're going to see less and less people engaging with your profile. So when you mix it up, because in business, again, you do bring a lot of yourself into it because that people want that human element. And so you do want to sort of mix it up so people aren't only hearing that. But the flip side of that is people see ads for like McDonald's or junk food or whatever every single day. So you don't want to be afraid to tell people what you do. If you can't tell people what it is that you do, how's anyone going to find out? And so that's kind of what I would say in terms of sharing free help. Then I would say, like, ask for beta test clients. And it'd be super transparent about this to your audience.
Yeah.
I would tell people exactly what I'm doing, why I'm asking for beta testers.
Authenticity again.
And yeah. And I would say, like, there's, I'm offering a discount, and here's why. It's not because there's less value. It's because this is about an exchange of value. That is, I'm refining a new process, and I want honest feedback, and then I want a testimonial if the client has a good experience. Because, test clients really, they're powerful in a sense that they help us to smooth out our systems, work out the kinks, figuring out what works and what doesn't. And I would say, remember, it's okay to be a beginner. And when someone is a beta test client, that, okay, that takes some of the pressure off. They know they're joining, knowing the service isn't going to be perfect, that there is going to be some feedback. It doesn't change the fact that you're an expert and able to help people. And then I would say the fourth step is really, then you want to share some success stories. So in the beginning, your success story might be your own. Maybe it's about a friend you helped for free, or you've had a couple of beta testers. And depending on the industry, like it's not necessarily going to be like a before-after photo. That's a common one, say in the weight loss industry. But it can be just about somebody talking about how you've helped them. And so if you're going to run a beta test program, essentially you're looking for three things from them. And in terms of, especially if you want to get like a testimonial, how did this program help you? What would you say to someone who's considering joining this program or using this service? And then what did they enjoy the most about working with you or being in that program? So really, they're just sharing why they had a good experience and why they would recommend you to somebody else.
That's definitely good when you ask for a testimonial or feedback to have a kind of structured kind of way for them to reply so that it's not just a, yeah, great, I loved it. There's a lot of emphasis from gurus, etc., on how you should be aiming for a lot more money than you probably actually need. There's also a lot of emphasis, especially from social platforms, on building a large audience, and which makes sense. But how valuable would you say it is to have a big audience?
I'm inclined to, and I'll say it depends on the service that you provide and whether it's like a one-time or a recurring service, and sort of the value of it. Can it be helpful? Yes. If you have basically a simple standalone offer that your audience can purchase, then maybe a larger audience is more beneficial. But the flip side of that is if you have sort of a recurring service-based business, it can be extremely difficult to build a sense of community within your audience. And I'll say, I remember, I was working my tail off trying to grow my audience. I was spending hours a day on social media, trying to research the right hashtags, comment on all the influencers' content, making sure I click like and so on.
Sure, the listener can relate to that.
It's not to say that these and it's not to say these activities don't have merit, but I was doing it because I thought I needed a bigger audience in order to be successful. And I had this idea in my head that I couldn't somehow succeed or earn a good living with a small audience. And, I was able to go fully online with less than 700 friends on Facebook and less than 3,000 followers on Instagram and less than 1,000 followers on Twitter. So what I would say is that a small audience, when nurtured, can actually become quite a highly engaged and intimate community. It's easier to build connections and relationships with a smaller audience because you can interact with more members of your audience on an individual level. And so what would be, I think, more helpful in a large audience is to get pretty specific with regards to the niche. And it feels like such a cliched word, but really the slice of the market that you serve, who you serve. And the more targeted your messaging can be, which can be really scary in the beginning, starting out. And maybe I'll touch on a little bit here about specificity in a moment. But what I would say is rather than focusing on vanity metrics like followers and likes, you're better off focusing on growing a more intimate or a deeper connection with your audience. Because remember, people buy on emotion and then they justify on logic. You want people to be connected to you, the individual, because if you have two people offering the same service and one of them they feel warm and fuzzy about your story and who you are, they feel like you're a good human being, they're a lot more likely to choose you. And I think this would go back to just saying you want to have real clarity on what it is that you do and then have the confidence to communicate that effectively.
But even saying that, we need to grow our audience to some extent. And
this is true.
I see that you know some ways to grow your audience without social media. Is that right?
Yeah. This is actually one great way to do that, which is being a guest on others' podcasts and sharing a bit about what you do. And that's something that can be done for free, other than obviously the investment of your time. But I think here's something that gets very often overlooked in the world of online. We forget about being we're so very often it's so glamorized, I should say, the idea of, I have international clients.
Mm-hmm.
So what? your other clients don't care. Like I said, there's enough business in my city of 100,000 people, and I have two cities an hour and a half away that are about 1 million people. So within 2 hours drive of me, geographically speaking, which Canada, 2 hours drive is no big deal. We don't end up in another country. Within 2 hours drive, I have like 2.5 million people. There's no way, probably in my lifetime, that I could serve 2.5 million people. And that's not to say everyone in there is an ideal client. But the point I'm making is you can become a local expert. And I think people forget about that. So pre-COVID, I would do seminars. So I would go to gyms and say, hey, do you want me to just give this seminar on your audience, to your client base, to help them get better results in the business that you're doing? I would look for complementary healthcare providers in my community and say, hey, if your clients express, challenges with this, point them in my direction, and we'd establish a relationship. I would go to, say, clinicians and say, hey, can I put these materials in your waiting room? It's such simple things that we don't think about, but it's really about becoming a local expert. If you've got a local publication, don't underestimate that. Say, hey, could I write a column for you? They're always looking for reasons to get people to read their content. So go to this local publication and be like, hey, could I write a weekly column for you? So it's thinking outside the bubble of Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and so on, to become that local expert in what it is you do. Of course, you could also join business networking communities. There's real value to, again, because of people buy from people they know, like, and trust. Well, you're going to know, like, and trust somebody that you met in, shall we say, human form, more so than a random ad on the internet. And so is there opportunities in your local community or your surrounding area to really establish yourself as an expert in the service that you provide? People are far more likely to choose you than some random guy, 3 continents away, who's looking to glamorize, I'm an international business person.
Yeah, very true. And it makes a lot of sense. And I can see how a lot of people can easily lose sight of the fact that there are lots of people on the doorstep who you can connect with in a more human way, even, such as, like you say, networking, local networking, that kind of thing. It's definitely worth remembering.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an old phrase from, like, there's gold in them there hills. It's a phrase, the gold rush. There's a lot of gold that just gets overlooked because, and maybe we could say the flip side of that, if people don't know anything about a gold rush, there was this stuff called fool's gold. And, it glittered. There's a phrase, who sings that? Maybe it's by Smash Mouth. It's all that glitters isn't gold, or something like that. But the point being, if we get caught up in sort of what we call vanity metrics, whether that's likes, followers, being quote unquote international or things like that, this is not what your client cares about. Your client cares about, can you solve my problem? Can you help me? And if you can, and let's say if the problem solves a big enough problem, I'm willing to pay good money for that. That's what it boils down to. And so we want to, especially starting out, you want to ditch this idea of vanity metrics and really get connected to, what is the problem I solve? Who do I help? How do I help them? How do I make their lives better? Because that's really the heart of business.
Good stuff. You also advise people on productivity, and staying productive is vital when it comes to organic marketing. So what are your main tips for better productivity?
The online world can be a very distracting place because virtually anything you want to access is at your fingertips. So I do little things like I have a newsfeed blocker on my browser. So it blocks all the news feeds of any major social media networks, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and so on. And I have another one called DFTube, or Distraction-Free YouTube, is essentially what that stands for. So that if I go to watch something on YouTube, they don't necessarily show me all the next recommended videos.
Sounds good.
So just recognizing, and there's a really fabulous book by Cal Newport called Digital Minimalism. And I think anybody who runs an online business should read this book, Digital Minimalism. Really, really powerful. Because the other thing to think about is, so we live in the attention economy. People are competing for our attention, and we're really fracturing our attention into like microseconds. What we don't think about as business people is how that actually affects our brain. and our creativity and our problem solving and the ability to think deeply. And so if you can develop the skill of critical thinking and spending time without being distracted, you will have a significant advantage over other people in business, because like the actual physical structure in your brain is different. So, but if I was going to, let's say, just give 3 key takeaways. Number 1, I would say stop looking for shortcuts to the hard and uncomfortable work.
Hard and uncomfortable work.
There's a lot of stuff that, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to need to do that maybe feels boring, repetitive. It's not glamorous. And because of that, we often will waste time with what I call like busy work. It's stuff that it feels like you're doing something to help your business, but you're totally not. You're just wasting time. It doesn't really, because remember, there's really like only 2 sort of core activities. There's either revenue generating activities, things that help your business, or there's just like time consuming activities. And so I would say point number 2 is become ruthless with your time management, because you have a limited number of productive hours in the day. It's, you think you wake up in the morning and you feel like you have a clean slate here. Oh, right, I've got, 8 hours or 10 hours or 12, whatever to do all this work. Probably a third of those or a quarter of those are actually going to be productive hours. And so you want to be ruthless in terms of your time management, because maybe people like, it's not to be a slave to a schedule, but time management is really about creating headspace. This activity is on my calendar, so I don't have to think about it and worry about it all the time that I'm not doing it, because I know I've already allocated time for that. So when it comes to that time, I'm going to do it. And understand, of course, in the real world, you're not going to stick to your calendar perfectly. But if you have some structure around how you're going to spend your time, you know what the most important activities are that you could be spending time on, and you make sure you prioritize those in your calendar. That's what gives you so much mental freedom, instead of trying to remember everything or having like these scattered to-do lists and stuff like that. Then when you go to do a task, what you're doing is you're focusing on a singular task at hand. And then you're going to do it more effectively. And so point 1, as it was like, stop looking for the shortcuts. There's unglamorous work you're going to have to do. There just is. Number 2 is to be ruthless with your time management. The third one I would say is to cut down on unnecessary complexity. So starting out, there's often a temptation to make things flashier, or use the newest, latest, greatest software. And it's like, no. You want to take a minimalist approach to setting up your business, because you want this business to run like in a lean and efficient fashion. And you only want to add in a degree of complexity when it will help you accomplish more in the same amount of time. And so it's, again, almost, you want to get ruthless about how your business operates, because what we miss is when we introduce complexity into our business, it creates the opportunity for things to break down and potentially slow you down, when you really only need a few key things to run a successful business, especially as a solopreneur.
Excellent. Makes perfect sense. So before we begin to wrap up, is there anything else that you might want to mention about organic marketing in particular?
Here's what I'd say. Because I keep in mind the sustainability and long-term nature of people's business. If you want to have a business that you can keep doing for years to come, you definitely need to have the ability to disconnect. When you let's say work a traditional 9-to-5 type job, there's the possibility of kind of shutting off when you get home, because your work is done for the day and you can't earn more money by worrying about your job at home. But in the online space, there's always the potential to earn money, and it can feel really difficult to shut off. And so, especially in the early stages when you're like, I need money and so on, and the opportunity to market organically is basically endless, infinite. You could market 24 hours a day. You'd obviously burn out and get exhausted. And so this isn't exactly a tip about organic marketing, but it's about building a sustainable practice. So you want to put time in your calendar. This is the time that I'm going to be doing organic outreach, connecting with potential followers and leads. This is the time I'm going to be writing content. And really outside that window, be okay with not doing it. When it feels like, I could be doing this, I need, and so on. Be okay with stepping away is what I would say in terms of organic marketing. Otherwise, you will burn out.
Great stuff. There's one more question, but before that, where can people find out more about your services, your coaching, and
the funny thing is, I'm actually just building out a website for the mentorship part of what it is that I do. So it's not actually live. I've been mentoring for 18 months, but I never talked about it publicly. It was all word of mouth. So you can, I even wrote a book that I will be publishing. It's called The 28-Day Coach: How to Build and Launch an Online Business in 28 Days. But at the time of recording this, it's not yet live. It'll be another week or two before it's live. But you can find me. Actually, you can friend me on Facebook, for example. I'm just Jonathan McLernon. But I do have a vanity link that will lead to where you can purchase the book, and it's called Lean and Efficient. So no spaces. Lean and Efficient .business /28-day-coach. And so that'll lead to the book, and it's really the sales page for the book, where I'll explain like exactly what I wrote in this book and why I want you to buy it and why I think it's going to help you. That's probably the easiest place to find me. And these links will be posted in the show notes because it's probably easier than trying to spell it. But Coach John at johnmclernon.com, and John is spelled Jon. There's no H there.
Great stuff. And this final question is something I ask every guest now. What's the one most important thing to do or be for freelancing success?
Man, that's a really good question. Authentic. Genuine.
Authentic.
Sincere. Be who you are. And it sounds so like cliche or esoteric when you say something like that, but you don't have to be something else to be successful. Who you are, the unique individual that you are, is enough to help somebody and to help a lot of people and to be successful. So don't fall into the trap of feeling the pressure to try to present more than you are on social media. All you're doing is setting yourself up for struggles when you try to deliver on something that you're not. Be who you are and stand in the confidence of your own worth and value.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks again for joining us, Jonathan. It's been a real pleasure, definitely.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure sharing with you as well.